Ayanokoji Kiyotaka, Lelouch v Britannia, and lastly, Katagiri Yuuichi. All of these individuals are well known for their strategic intelligence and most notably their manipulation. Today, we'll not only be discussing each of these characters' feats in manipulation, but also breaking down just how they go about manipulating others. Now, while Ayanokoji is known a lot for manipulating things from the shadows, he's also capable of similar feats to characters like Johan. As in Year 1 Volume 7, Ayanokoji threatens Kamuro by implying that he will report Kamuro's surveillance efforts to Sakayanagi and expose her inability to effectively carry out her orders. By leveraging the threat of exposing Kamuro's perceived weakness, Ayanokoji aims to destabilize Kamuro's confidence and loyalty to Sakayanagi. Ayanokoji doesn't know if Kamuro spies him on behalf of Sakayanagi, but insists on it to find out if there really is a connection. Ayanokoji highlights the apparent contradiction in Kamuro's behavior, spending her time on a mundane task like tailing Ayanokoji, while vehemently denying any loyalty to Sakayanagi. By framing the act of tailing as a mundane and uninteresting task, Ayanokoji subtly undermines Kamuro's denial, implying that such an action will not be undertaken without a deeper motivation. Second, Ayanokoji challenges Kamuro's assertion by asking a rhetorical question. Then why do you follow her orders? This question serves to highlight the inconsistency in Kamuro's behavior and prompts her to reflect on her underlying motivations. Ayanokoji implies that Kamuro's actions speak louder than her words, suggesting that there must be a reason why Kamuro continues to follow Sakayanagi's order despite claiming to have no loyalty to her. Kamuro falters due to Ayanokoji's probing, and he's able to deduce more information due to his manipulation of Kamuro, displaying his ability to manipulate people on the spot. But before we move on, is this feat enough for Ayanokoji to go against Lelouch, Yuuichi, Johan, or even Aizen? Let's ask him to find out. Now this is what Ayanokoji is saying, so let's ask the GOAT, Aizen, how he thinks of Ayanokoji. It would be interesting to see how these two compare one day. Although, I'm only able to ask this thanks to Polybuzz AI. Polybuzz AI is a free-to-use app that allows you to talk to your favorite character from any series. And yes, any. For you creative people, you can even make your own AI. Now go check it out from the link in my description and use the code Nucha22 to unlock Polybuzz AI Plus. Even Ayanokoji likes to compare his intelligence with AI. Now go download the app from the link in the description. Lelouch is one of the more interesting characters on this list to say the least. That's because of certain people's flawed perception of his manipulation. A lot of people believe that Lelouch is carried by GEASS. And while yes, the GEASS is what allowed him to pull off many of his grand plans, but he's been able to manipulate large groups of people without having to rely on the power. Combining that with his already genius levels of intelligence makes Lelouch a formidable manipulator. In order to fight against Britannia, Lelouch needed an army. An unbeatable army of soldiers who would not only follow his every command, but have unyielding loyalty for him. He decided that the group of Japanese rebels currently fighting against Britannia would be perfect pawns for his larger goal. But first, he needs to save Suzaku, a Japanese soldier who fights for the Britannian army. News of his arrest spread everywhere, and the Japanese rebels that he wants to recruit are the most dissatisfied with the news. He decides that he can kill two birds with one stone. He can not only rescue Suzaku, his legitimate friend, but he can also use the recapture of Suzaku to gain the absolute trust of the Japanese rebels, which he later intends to turn into the Black Knights. So, what does Lelouch do? He starts by contacting the Black Knights and requesting to meet with them, which they can't deny. Lelouch had previously helped the Black Knights in episode 2 of CODE GEASS by creating an efficient battle strategy on the spot, which he ordered them to follow. This resulted in a victory for the Japanese rebels, as well as getting them all to witness just how intelligent he was. By leaving a lasting impact on a small group of people, Lelouch created feelings of intrigue within them. And naturally, they wouldn't be able to say no to the chance at meeting the man who defeated Area 11's army. They then board the train, which begins to move. Lelouch has positioned himself at the very end of the train cart, but is still on call with Karen. He suddenly tells Karen to look out the window. Before he asks her what she saw exactly, Karen replied with, "The Britannian city that was built on the blood of the Japanese." He then tells her to look left, and on the left is remnants of the Japanese city that Britannia destroyed. Finally, the Japanese rebels meet Lelouch, who's fully fitted in the Zero costume at the end of the train. The rebels ask Lelouch why he gave them a history lesson, and Lelouch responds by saying, "I can make the impossible possible." This then leads to the rebels deciding to temporarily ally with Lelouch to save Suzaku, which is a total success. Not only has Suzaku been saved, but the capabilities of Lelouch are undeniable to the rebels. They fully trust Lelouch and appoint him as their leader. All of this was emotional manipulation at its finest, which was shielded by using the Japanese rebels' hatred of Britannia to bring them and Lelouch together. Lelouch knows very well that the Japanese hate Britannia. They invaded their country, enslaved them, slaughtered them, stole their identities, and committed many more atrocities against the nation of Japan. The rebels would feel the most resentment against Britannia as they were actively fighting for their own freedom. Karen in particular lost her elder brother to Britannia and has sworn to defeat them to avenge what has been lost. By taking them on the train and having them witness what Britannia stole from them, Lelouch was able to motivate them, as well as make it appear as if he understood them and wanted to fight against Britannia too. What makes this all the more better is that Lelouch doesn't have to fake his emotions. He genuinely wants to defeat Britannia, but for different reasons than the rebels. But of course, he can't just come out and say why he wants to defeat Britannia, as that would mean having to reveal his identity as a Britannian prince, which would immediately cause the Black Knights to lose their trust for him. During the second half of Code Geass, Lelouch had an encounter with Mao, another Geass user. Mao had the ability to read minds, which made him a very troubling opponent. Lelouch's intelligence seemingly didn't matter, as anything he thought of, Mao would be able to read and quickly counter. So, how does one defeat a mind reader, especially one that had the advantage of prep time on him, as Mao was planning for an entire month to take down Lelouch? Lelouch knew that Mao hated public spaces because he wasn't able to turn off his mind reading. Lelouch decided their battleground would be an abandoned amusement park. From here, he hacked into the system of Clovis Land and pre-recorded an entire message that will be uploaded as soon as Mao arrived. Mao arrives, and the pre-recorded message plays. It has the perfect amount of pauses, and at some point, Lelouch even cuts Mao off, making it seem like a genuine conversation to Mao. Lelouch knew that CC was Mao's biggest weakness, and so he emotionally manipulated Mao by dangling the fact that he knew CC's real name over Mao's head. This caused Mao to lose all sense of logic and grow extremely jealous, to which Lelouch twisted the knife even deeper by successively saying, "Do you know why she never told you? Because CC is mine. She belongs to me in every way. I have gained everything from her, including the parts you've never seen. All of her." This caused Mao to go into an emotional panic and lose focus as the police that Lelouch tipped off arrived. What makes this all the more impressive from a manipulation standpoint is that Lelouch barely had any information on Mao as a person. He didn't know his habits, likes, dislikes, etc. The only thing he knew about Mao was his obsession with CC, and the fact that he couldn't control his gears. Lelouch used Mao's infatuation of CC against him, causing him to suffer a humiliating defeat. What makes it all the more embarrassing is that Lelouch was totally at a disadvantage. Even though his gears can control anyone, it can't be used an infinite amount of times. Once you use it on a select person, it will no longer work on them. Not to mention, Mao's ability is absolutely broken, as he can read minds, which makes Lelouch's intellects and strategies meaningless if Mao can already anticipate them. Despite the disadvantages, however, Lelouch was still able to prevail and prove to not just Mao, but the Watchers themselves, that he doesn't need his gears to defeat people. Easily, Lelouch's greatest feat of manipulation is the Zero Requiem. It's a plan that Lelouch created upon defeating his father. It starts with Lelouch assuming the throne, not only revealing to the world that he's alive, but revealing he killed his own father. From here, Lelouch uses his geass, which has awakened in his other eye. This doesn't make his geass stronger, but rather it increases the range. He uses it to geass the entire royal family, and some of Britannia's knights to acknowledge him as emperor. From here, Lelouch becomes the 99th Emperor of Britannia. He's now gained an army to take on his next opponents, that being the United Nations, the Black Knight, and Snizel, who's equipped with the Flayer. He then begins to position himself as a kind-hearted emperor as he abolishes Charles the Britannia's rule and erases all memory of him from the eyes of the public. He then requests a meeting with the United Nations and tricks them by seemingly coming along as he wants them to believe he follows their rules. Before he enters the meeting, however, he's stopped by Karen, who asks what he's really after, but he totally ignores her. Even when she embraces him, he's still cold and distant. So please keep this in mind. Lelouch attends the United Nations meeting, but it's all a ruse. He signals Suzaku to crash the meeting with his nightmare frame, and uses the meeting to publicly declare himself as the enemy of the world. A long, drawn-out battle goes on, which ends in Lelouch's victory, with him once again declaring he is the enemy in the Obey Me World speech. However, 2 months later, Zero reappears and kills the demon emperor Lelouch v Britannia. We quickly come to learn that all of this, taking the throne, fighting against the world itself, positioning himself as a corrupt tyrant, and dying at the hands of Zero, the symbol of justice, was all a part of Lelouch's plan. He knew that the only way to achieve his goal, creating a peaceful and kind world, would require sacrifice. So, he manipulated the entire world into hating him so that they would come together to defeat him, and use his existence as a constant reminder of just how damaging war can truly be. The Zero Requiem is such an insane feat because in one plan that only required a month of prep time, Lelouch was able to satisfy everyone's needs and desires. And by sacrificing himself, he was able to atone all of his sins. By using his status to manipulate everybody, Lelouch was able to provide salvation to the world itself. So, while the geass does allow Lelouch to manipulate easier, he's still capable of manipulating others without it. Lelouch uses his insane level of emotional intelligence alongside his charisma to manipulate large groups of people to do his bidding, as we see with the Black Knights. His aura and charisma are so great in fact that he's able to not only inspire those he comes into contact with at any given point in time, but he also gains the undying loyalty of the Japanese and briefly even the nation of Britannia itself once he takes the throne. Lelouch tends to rely on emotional manipulation, white knight tactics, and his intelligence to manipulate. He proves time and time again he can win even when the odds are against him, and is literally stated to be a man of miracles. By showing his skills on the battlefield, as well as inspiring his troops, he's able to manipulate the masses into not just believing in him, but also willing to die for him. So, how does Lelouch compare to the last manipulator on this list, Katagiri Yuuichi? A briefing about the nature of this game. It's essentially a trial for Shibe, where Tenji, Hidori, and Yuuichi have to listen to 3 sins from Shibe and still decide if they want to save him by getting back the money from the school trip and pay it to release him from the trial. Yuuichi, due to his injuries from the past game, couldn't give Tenji much aid, but he gave him a small clue that he predicted would help him clear out one of the 3 major sins that Shibe had, and gave Tenji the will to save Shibe. However, since Yuuichi knew it would be tricky to deal with getting back the true money for the students themselves, he had to take extreme measures. By blackmailing his own teacher through faking an exploit using Kururugi, he forced the teacher then to gather back all the money from the students, ultimately being able to save Yuuichi. This feat is better than all bets by a small margin, seeing that Yuuichi was able to use so many random variables in his aid. His initial plan to let Tenji ask one of his classmates that trusts him to gather back the money failed, and Yuuichi predicted that due to his fear for Shibe, Tenji would go and beg the class for that money again, and this wouldn't work, but it will let his classmates have a fear or a stigma against money. This is known as a coercive diversion, and it's actually a complex manipulation tactic. And we can easily infer that Yuuichi learned it from Tyson and applied it perfectly here. So with this in mind, when Yuuichi exploited Kokorogi, he knew she couldn't say anything against it because of how he sacrificed himself a lot in the previous game for her, making her feel a lot of guilt and the need to repay him, successfully guilt-tripping her. And connecting both of his tactics with his prediction, he was able to successfully regain all the money and save Shibe. This showcases how great Yuichi's manipulation and prediction can be even when he's tied by a time crunch. So, after analyzing all these, whose manipulation do you think is the best? The feats speak for themselves, and if it isn't obvious, it's not close at all.